When I first saw Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, I loathed it. What can I say, I was an avid book reader, and was really pissed off at all the changes it made. It's not like the other movies didn't make changes, but I think the span of time between my reading the book and watching this movie were much closer, and so I was more picky. It was also the longest book to that point, and had some really striking visuals that turned out a lot different in the movie. Of course, now I realize that changes are necessary for adaptations. So were the problems I initially had with the movie still valid? Following a violent appearance by Death Eaters, the followers of Voldemort, at the Quidditch World Cup, Harry's fourth year at Hogwarts coincides with the Tri-Wizard Tournament, a sort of Olympics event between wizard schools. We're actually introduced to two of Hogwarts' counterparts in Europe, and each school chooses a champion to compete. However, under mysterious circumstances, Harry is chosen as a fourth champion, and he has to undergo a series of tasks to, if not win, at least survive the tournament. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was directed by Mike Newell, who previously made, among other films, Four Weddings and a Funeral. Unlike Cuarón and even Columbus, Newell didn't bring much of a unique visual style to the film. But can you tell this is a guy who's directed rom-coms? There are definitely moments where I remember why I disliked this movie so much. It's not entirely his fault, though. This was the first entry of both the books and the films to emphasize teen drama more prominently. Which is fine, these are supposed to be relatable characters, and as they're growing up, some teen issues have to be addressed. But I never felt J.K. Rowling was that great at writing teen drama, at least not alongside the context of her world. And it takes away from some of the more imaginative ideas and adventure, where in previous movies, prominent questions included how will they get information from a giant spider? Or what is this supposedly dead man doing wandering the school? Here it's, who will Harry ask to the ball? Some of these monotonous scenes are necessary, but did the film have to add goofy moments of characters fighting over dates, learning to dance, and just overblown shunning tactics like when Ron refuses to speak to Harry? Back then I could get that bullshit just as easily from freaking High School Musical. These scenes are robbed of Harry Potter magic, and for about half an hour it almost plays as a British version of a John Hughes movie. So I guess a Richard Curtis movie. I also can't help but notice when it comes to the plot, this film feels like filler. I may have to wait until Order of the Phoenix to know for sure, but there's a real sense this story just exists for its climax, so it can kickstart the series' overall arc. Of course, you could argue that for Chamber of Secrets as well, but that movie's just much more fun. I like that J.K. Rowling took the risk of creating the Tri-Wizard Tournament as a framing device, but it's not the most interesting of ideas. Even reading the book, I wasn't too keen on Wizard Inter-Varsity Championships, as cool as it was to learn there were other wizarding schools in the world. One thing I will admit this film did was it expanded the universe slightly, by showing the wizard world's reach extends beyond Britain. But once again, the pacing is inconsistent. Like the first film, the whole first quarter is really rushed, skipping over a lot of the Riddle House and the Quidditch World Cup, for instance, both high points for the book. It's especially lazy how they cut the Death Eater attack by having Harry knocked out for the duration. It steadies, only in time for the teen drama bits, which is unfortunate. But even after that, moments like the death of Barty Crouch are just briefly mulled over. Those scenes could easily have been given more time if we didn't spend a few minutes giggling at Ron having to dance as McGonagall. That being said, I'm not as harsh on how much was cut as I was when it came out. True, I'd have liked to have seen the Quidditch World Cup, if for nothing else in the world building. I miss the Dursley's over-the-top antics, and the amusing Bagman, who is essentially Lockhart 2.0, but some portions of the book, like the house elf subplot, definitely needed to be cut. And even though I like the obstacles Harry came across in the maze being direct references to Greek mythology, they didn't connect at all to anything that happened subsequently. One thing you'll definitely notice watching this movie is that just about all the teenage boys have long hair, which is a grooming choice some may not remember made a comeback in the mid-2000s. I even have my own embarrassing photos from that time period. But the dated hairstyles aside, the performances from these young actors are still nothing special. They aren't necessarily bad, and some places do feel realistic, but the material they're given is very pedestrian. Sure, Rupert Grint and Emma Watson acted their animosity fine, but that doesn't make it enjoyable to watch. I've said it before, the students really aren't the most interesting characters in Harry Potter. The adults are. Which is why I was impressed this film a couple times gave us scenes from their point of view, something I don't think we've had since the opening of the first film. When it comes to the principal storyline, Ron and Hermione aren't important. As for Harry, Daniel Radcliffe has performed some scenes very well, and others just okay. Other students get some time to shine, though. It was nice to see more of Fred and George than we've had in the past, even if their biggest moment ended in a corny physical joke. Neville got more of a spotlight, but Matthew Lewis still hasn't quite come into his own. That being said, he and Ginny were about the only stable couple at the Yule Ball. Malfoy was really underplayed, to the point he actually could have been cut entirely, but then we wouldn't have that ferret scene. Michael Gammon's remembered in this movie for playing angry Dumbledore. Everyone's joked about this scene. But in the latter half, he actually has some really good moments. Though he doesn't appear much, Alan Rickman's great, Hagrid's there for just a love interest threat, and Flitwick now is only good for jokes. He's also found himself a Philosopher's Stone, apparently. Sirius, who after being such a key part of the last film, has a cameo here by way of a fireplace effect, one done better in subsequent movies at that. Timothy Spall is still pretty good, and Moaning Merle is back to hit on Harry in the bathtub, which is extra creepy when you remember Shirley Henderson's in her 40s and Radcliffe's still a teenager. Let's see, who else came back?
If it rains, you'll be the first to know.
Oh yeah, I missed you, Jason Isaacs. Though once they set him up as a serious villain by the end, he's much less enjoyable. In each movie, Harry Potter does really well with its new cast members, and this one's not an exception. The coolest part of the movie is Brendan Gleeson as Mad-Eye Moody, playing this really rough but effective teacher. Gleeson is fantastic at conveying Moody's erratic behavior. I don't know what kind of research he did for the role, but it paid off. Even if the script made his eventual identity too obvious. Oh yeah, there is no mistake he's pulling the strings, and his scene with Crouch confirms, if not his personal relationship to him, the fact he's the one who kills him before his next scene. Like Prisoner of Azkaban, two of my favorite actors show up in this movie, Brendan Gleeson and Ralph Fiennes. Fiennes is exceptional as Voldemort, bringing this evil overlord for the first time to life. Makes sense. Fiennes, having previously played another Nazi, now he's moved up to Wizard Hitler. Voldemort's post-resurrection scene is the best in the movie, largely because of Fiennes' performance. The Crouches are both played by adequate actors. I love seeing Roger Lloyd Pack show up in movies, and being a Doctor Who fan, I get a particular kick out of seeing David Tennant as his deranged son. Frances de la Tour, another awesome British actress, does alright with her role as Madame Maxime, and though he often overplays it, Predrag Bjelak isn't bad as Karkaroff. Rita Skeeter, though, whose J.K. Rowling's satire of tabloid journalists, didn't need to be included. I love Miranda Richardson, but it's another glorified cameo. Of all the champions, the one who makes the biggest impression, which isn't saying much, is, I hate to say, Robert Pattinson. Despite their career mauling in the Twilight series, Pattinson's fine. He plays third degree as a pretty boy, which he's supposed to be, but also a decent guy. And by the way, though he's not in it much, Jeff Rawle plays Amos Diggory's Grief terrifically. The guy who plays Crumb I'm not going to pronounce, considering how much I probably butchered Bjelak, but he's incredibly bland. Fleur is played by Clemence Posey. Wait a minute. Brendan Gleeson, Ralph Fiennes, Clemence Posey? Is this movie just a casting call for In Bruges? Let's just say she's a much better actress than she gets to be in this film. I ironically love how they try to build suspense for who the champions will be. Gee, I wonder if it'll just happen to be the only three characters we've seen put their names in the goblet. Oh yeah, and of all the new students introduced in this series, Katie Leon as Cho Chang is just about the best from the get-go. Indeed, one of the only decent teen movie moments is when she rejects Harry's date. In terms of visuals, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire emphasizes a bit more dark imagery, while also trying to handpick cues from Columbus and Cuarón. At times they can be really good though. The production design during the Yule Ball is fantastic, and the maze is great to behold. Though it did look for a second that the final task is going to be surviving the climax of The Shining, but I never cared for the design of the Goblet of Fire. The mermaid's design is creative if the CG isn't so good, and the dragon looks alright. The snake is creepy enough, and Mr. Weasley's TARDIS looks nice. Generally, the CG is improving as the technology does. CG aside though, this film's not without its weird moments. I'm not just talking about some of the cinematography, which is again out of romantic comedy sometimes, but the staging in places, and moments like Moody sticking Malfoy in Crabbe's pants, or Harry dribbling. And what the f*** is this? Seriously, what the f*** is this? Just about anything with Moody is pretty good though. The shot of him outside the castle in the rain is stupid, but cool. That first Defense Against the Dark Arts class is done really well, both in its comedy and seriousness. The introduction of the unforgivable curses is an important point in the series. And I love the shot of Harry reacting to the killing curse. The audience, like him, knows the green light, but hasn't been exposed to its context before now. Even more interesting is when Moody shows Neville the torture curse, which is actually quite sinister when you take into account the later reveal that the man impersonating Moody at this time did horrible things to Neville's parents. The dragon sequence is pretty cool, even though I spent the whole time wondering what the crowd in the stadium was doing while Harry was gone. So many magical ideas are introduced in these films, you don't quite know which ones will be relevant to the plot, so the return of the Porky in the maze was nicely unexpected. The Pensive, which is a clever device with a lousy name, allows for a pretty good scene. Though what Harry sees as almost laughably convenient, it is nonetheless intriguing, hinting at both what became of the Longbottoms and Snape's past as a spy, both of which would become more relevant in the next installment. But really, the film only gets good in the last act. The return of Voldemort is great. We get our first truly epic duel, and the aftermath plays out surprisingly well. Even though Harry returns to Cheers, the world's very different now. You feel the dread of Voldemort being back. Michael Gambon delivers a great speech, and the main three perform their finale of optimism in a scary world quite believably. My only gripe would be I'd have liked more time interrogating Barty Crouch Jr., but probably just because it would have given David Tennant more screen time. But Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire ending well doesn't quite make up for a lot of tedious elements. It's certainly not as bad as I initially thought, but it is the least of the series thus far, coming in at just okay. There are some really good performances, a few great scenes, some pretty great production design the more I think about it, and the music, though not John Williams, is still okay. But it is bogged down by a less than compelling story, a focus on awkward teen drama in the middle that contributes nothing to the rest of the film and feels very out of place, and the fact that by doing this it cuts from the best material from the book. Up till now, the movies have been almost as good as their book counterparts, and while Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is probably not the worst of the series, it is the point where the books clearly become the better experience. Besides, I'm already in the process of organizing a better Triwizard Tournament between Gandalf, Merlin, and the Wizard of Oz.